I've been a park ranger at Indiana Dunes for almost 25, 26 years, and I really enjoy it. It's a great place to work. As George said, it's beautiful. The thing that I like about it the most is the fact that things change all the time, and there's always something new that can see and do at Indiana Dunes National Park. And as George referred to, we just became a new national park um, in 2019, so we're still young as far as national parks go. Um, and so we're getting a lot of visitation. It's one of those things where we didn't get any extra money. Um, we didn't Nothing special happened. The only thing was a name change, and because of that name change, it put on everybody's radar that hey, now there's another national park to come and visit. And so we had several thousands of more visitors, especially that first summer of 2019, and it was overwhelming. I'll be honest with you, it was overwhelming, and we had a lot of issues with traffic and just the craziness. And our resource management team, they had to they had to work overtime trying to figure out how are we going to protect this resource from all these new visitors because I'll be honest, they didn't know. They come in and they start tromping through the dunes and tromping on our grass and getting into the environments and things like that. And so we had to really think about how we were going to manage the people for the safety of themselves and the ecosystem there. So that being said, I want to talk a little bit about that because I do want to encourage you guys to come out safely and enjoy the park and enjoy the ecosystems that we have out there. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys now. Do that, and I have a short PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to do with you guys. I'm going to share with you guys. All right. So Indiana Dunes National Park. As you guys probably know, the park was known for its dunes. We have these beautiful sand dunes. A lot of people don't think about Northwest Indiana as being beautiful and sandy. But yeah, because of the glaciers that were here 14, 15,000 years ago, during what we call the Wisconsin glacial era, we have this topography of the land where we've got these dune and swale ecosystems and large dunes that gather on the southern shores of Lake Michigan here. We've got the plants, like you see here, the marram grass and other plants. In fact, there was a magazine, oh gosh, I think it was about 15 or 20 years ago. We were ranked in the top 100 beaches and destinations in the world to come to because of Lake Michigan and the fact that it was fresh water. We had these pristine sands and things like that. It's really neat. So it was a destination park even before we became a national. So what I have here is a map, and you can see on this map, it stretches from in the west, Gary, Indiana, all the way east to Michigan City, Indiana. And in that compass, we have about 15,000 acres or over 15,000 acres. And as I said before, we sit on the southern shores of Lake Michigan. So we get the flora and the fauna from the north, south, east, and west converging here. And a lot of people are thinking, well, yeah, it's beautiful and everything, but really why is it a national park? Why is it set aside for the whole world to see forever? Well, the main reason for that is because it's biological diversity. As you guys know, diversity is the key to life. Without diversity that we have on our planet, we wouldn't have air to breathe, we wouldn't have water to drink, we wouldn't have food to eat. The basic things that we need to survive comes from the diversity that we have here on this planet. And Indiana Dunes is just like a jewel in the rough because we have this diversity. In fact, we're ranked 6th or 7th in plant diversity in the nation. We have more orchids in our park than the Hawaiian Islands do. We have scientists that come from around the world to do studies about the plants and the animals and the ecosystems and how it's juxtaposed with all the industry, towns and cities that surround it. You can see on the map, there's everything in green is the park, but there's lots of that white space or the tan space that's in there. And that's industry, that's towns and cities. But yet and still we've got all of this biological diversity. And it's just one of those beautiful things. And that's why it's set aside for people to come and see. It's a really good, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but it's a great place to come and recreate as well. So let's do this. We're going to go from the west end of the park to the east end of the park and kind of do a virtual tour of the park. So one of the founders of the park was actually someone from Illinois that you guys might be familiar with, which was Paul H. Douglas. Without his hard work and the work of many other people in Indiana, we wouldn't have the park that you see today. They're the ones that started it. And so therefore, we named our education center after him, the Paul H. Douglas Center for Environmental Education. And I work out of the Douglas Center. That's where my office is. And that's where we have kids that come and do programs with us, and we educate the surrounding communities about the biodiversity in our region. This is a picture of the Douglas Center. And I have to say that sometimes I'm a little bit jealous, or I'm a little bit ashamed to say that this is where I work, because so many people are jealous of me. They see this and they're like, man, that's your office? That's where you work? And it's like, yeah, that's where I go to work every day, and I get to see cool things. In fact, my office window overlooks this pond here, and I get to see, waterfowl come in. I see birds of prey. I see wild turkey all the time. Sometimes it's distracting and I can't get my work done, but most of the time it's very pleasant. And I'm able to, it kind of inspires me to create programs and get out there and teach the kids and the communities about the environment. In the Douglas Center, which is very special, we have an auditorium where we show films. On the weekends, we're open to the public, and you guys, anyone can come. And we have speakers that come from all over the place. The Field Museum, Science and Industry, especially, they come here and they do presentations. Now, because of COVID, we haven't had those, but we're starting to ramp those back up again. And hopefully pretty soon, we'll be having more speakers come, birders and things like that come and do talks about the ecosystems and the things that they see in the park. This happens to be Jim Louderman from the Field Museum showing his insect collection. And he's got some live insects, and you can see families come and they have a great time when they come to the Douglas Center. We also have an arts and craft room that's open up to the public as well on the weekends. And it's actually open during the week as well, so you can come anytime. But during the school year, if you come during the week, they might have classrooms in there. So it's better to come on the weekends. But it's really neat because kids can come in here. We have plenty of art supplies. Kids can get kind of messy and everything in here. We have aprons for them, and they can create their own nature art, which is really neat. It helps kids to kind of open up their brain and inspires them to create things. This is one of our volunteers, and she's setting up and getting ready to help some kids do some painting and get their nature art going. We also have, this is my favorite room actually, and the room that I'm actually in charge of. This is the animal room, and we have live animals. We have snakes, frogs, toads, we have salamanders, fish, largemouth bass, bluegills, crappie, all that stuff. And we teach the kids about the indigenous plants and animals that are in the dunes, and they actually get to help us feed the animals on the weekends. So they get to work with the ranger and feed the animals. And we bring some of the animals out so they actually get a chance to see the animals up close in person. You can see we have local volunteers and kids that actually come from Boys and Girls Clubs to help promote the animals and work with the youth in the Gary area and surrounding communities. One of the very things that I'm very proud of is we're one of the first parks to have a nature play zone. or a nature play area. And it's one of those things that my boss tasked me with. She said, you know, we need to create a place where people in the surrounding communities, especially the youth, can come and immerse themselves in nature and not be afraid. Because it's surprising, you know, I grew up playing in the outdoors, hunting, fishing, and so being outside wasn't a problem for me. But over the years, I noticed school groups that came in, and even local families, and even families from Chicago and the surrounding area would come in, and they would be afraid. They'd like, yeah, we'd like to go out. Are there any dangerous animals out there? What should I be afraid of? And in my mind, I'm thinking, there's nothing to be afraid of. This is beautiful. Get out and hike and enjoy it, right? Um, and so what we've decided to do is kind of turn that mindset around for not only the children, but for the adults. So with this nature play area that we created, that I helped create, and even the youth in the area helped me create, the kids get to go out, they get to build forts. We have fort building contests during the fall, during the summer, and even in the wintertime, where they do ice forts and things like that. They get to climb trees, which I was so surprised. There were so many kids that came through our Douglas Center and they said they had never climbed a tree before. I actually broke my ankle falling out of a tree as a kid. So I was very surprised to hear that these kids hadn't even, and I didn't tell them, obviously I did not tell them that I broke my ankle climbing in a tree, because that probably would have stopped them. But again, that's one of those things that as a kid, that's a rite of passage, right? Climbing trees, wading around in creeks and things like that. So getting these kids out, especially this Hispanic group from Chicago, this class from Chicago, was wonderful. I remember this program. It was hard because I didn't speak Spanish, but it didn't matter, because once they got into the nature play area, nature spoke. That's all it took. They started working together as a team and just had a blast. And in fact, I remember at the end of the program, they didn't want to leave. And the teachers were getting a little upset because their bus was going to be late getting back to Chicago. But hey, that's nature for you. So that's the nature play area, and it's surrounded by Miller Woods. Now, the nature play area, like I said, that's an area that we let the kids go and play and do the things that kids can do in the woods. But of course, when you're in the park itself and on our trails and stuff, you need to stay on the trails, and we explain that to the kids. And the Miller Woods ecosystem I'm going to talk about now is a very unique, special ecosystem. So it's an oak savanna ecosystem. And so the mature oak trees are the primary plant that you're going to find there. And the way that it stays an oak savanna is the fact that it has less than 50% canopy cover. You can see the openness here. So because of it being open like that, you have lots of different animals like these deer, like the deer that you see here, and other vegetation growing in the area. It also has what we call a dune and swale topography. And so these ponds that you see here are very unique and very special. In fact, they're the headwaters. These ponds and the Marquette Lagoon are the headwater to the Grand Calumet River that runs through Chicago. And like I was saying, there's a kind of a specialness to these ponds, because the migrating waterfowl that are coming up the Great Lakes Flyway use these little ponds that you see here as cover. Because if you can imagine, if especially on a hard migration and the weather's not good, being exposed out on Lake Michigan, that's not a good thing. There's not a lot of food out there. It's almost like a food desert, if you want to call it that, for the birds, right? And they're exposed to any conditions, high winds, cold, what you might have as far as weather goes. Well, a lot of them like to duck into the dunes here, and you can see the close proximity to the lake it is, and they find food, they find shelter, and it's a great stopover place that they can stay and rest and fuel before they continue their migration. One of the animals that help keep the oak savanna ecosystem is the beaver. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a beaver chew right in the center of the picture here. There's a wetland here, and the beaver are chewing the trees there. This picture here is pretty cool. I love taking this picture. This is one of the groups that I had. Um, and these kids got to stand on top of a beaver lodge. So we were hiking through the dunes and we were talking about Miller Woods ecosystem, and I was taking them through. We got to the beaver lodge and they were like, wow, they've never seen one before. So the kids got to stand on top of the beaver lodge and see how structurally sound it is, right? And they were wondering, well, where are the beaver? And I said, they're in there. They're underneath us right now. Most of the beaver in this area are nocturnal because they don't want to have conflict with humans, right? So they were really surprised and really thought that was really cool that they were standing on the beaver's home, right? And the beaver were actually in there. The kid is actually pointing to a beaver slide. And I was explaining to the kids that day that what the beaver have done in a lot of the dune areas, dune and swale areas, is they'll climb the dune, they'll chew down the tree, slide it down the dune, and then float it over to their lodge, dismantle it, and fortify their lodge and eat it, and things like that. So really good experience for the kids to learn about the beaver. And if you don't know much about adaptations for beaver, they have membranes on their nose, their eyes, and their ears so they can dive in the water. They are aquatic rodents, and they have a special gland in the back of their legs that secrete oil. And they rub that oil. They're always rubbing oil all over them. So even in the dead of winter, if they're in the water swimming around, that oil and water doesn't mix. So that oil keeps that water rushing off of them while they're swimming around. And down underneath the guard hairs, those long, thick hairs you see there, underneath that are down hairs. And that down hair, that soft, fluffy down hair, helps keep that animal nice and warm. Now, the most amazing thing, I think, about the beaver is the fact that, gosh, they chew down whole trees. If you can imagine walking up to a tree and just start gnawing on it and chewing that thing down. Now, I know a lot of people are like, man, beavers cause us problems, and they do, because we're kind of encroached on their habitat. And now they're making this great comeback, and they're in our areas in the Indiana dunes and other areas in Chicago, and they have to be removed and sometimes, unfortunately, exterminated. But that still doesn't lessen the fact that, wow, it's one of those amazing things that animals can do, chewing down a whole tree like that and using the parts to not only build their home, but also dam up streams and things like that and create whole new ecosystems. It's really cool. And so I've got some pictures here of some fresh beaver chews. This is a picture, I've got to tell this story real quickly, of a beaver chew, but there's a story to it. So one day I had my backpack on and I was actually going out hiking. I was going to hike down to the lake and back. And I came out of the building and I walked down the trail, maybe 100 yards or so, and I see this kid, and he's standing holding a branch and he's jumping up and down. And I'm thinking, who would leave their toddler out here in the cold like this? I couldn't believe it. And so I walk up there closer, and I realized when I got within 40 feet or 50 feet of the animal, it was a beaver. And he had just started to chew this down and it was still attached. And he was like huffing and puffing and trying to pull it down and bend it over so it would break. And he saw me, and I'm fumbling around with my cell phone trying to get pictures and a video because I'm thinking no one's going to believe me that a beaver's jumping around holding on to branches trying to pull a tree down, right? They chew trees down. And he saw me and took off and jumped, and the pond was frozen. So he jumped into a hole that he had made and got underneath the ice, and you could see the bubbles coming up as he scurried away underneath the ice. It was pretty cool. So that's that little story for you. Back to the ecosystem. The Miller Woods ecosystem is extremely rare and unique as it goes with ecosystems. And so we have to manage that. If we were to leave it alone, it would revert into something that we wouldn't want. So we've got to keep it, we want to keep it at the oak savanna state and keep that ecosystem alive and well. And one of the ways that we do that is fire. And a lot of people don't understand that fire has been a part of ecosystems and part of the ecosystems around the world for hundreds of thousands of years. The Native Americans in the area, they knew that, right? They knew how important fire was. Now that we've come and moved into these ecosystems and put our houses or shopping malls and roads and things there, we think of fire as bad. We want to keep it away, but it actually hurts the ecosystem and doesn't let that ecosystem thrive. So our fire technicians, which is part of our resource management team, they go in and they do prescribed burns. Now, this is what it looks like after one of our prescribed burns. It looks like devastation. And so what we have to do, because people don't understand prescribed burns and they'll understand how important and the history of fire and ecosystems, they think that us park rangers, have just destroyed the woods. So what we do is before we do the burn and after we do the burn, we go door to door giving out pamphlets and speaking to people saying, hey, there's going to be a fire. We're doing this on purpose to maintain the ecosystem, and there might be smoke, right? Letting them know that there might be lots of smoke, but that their property and the area that they live is safe, right? And most of the people understand, because within a month after our burn, just a few weeks after our burn, this is what we get. Come those spring rains, man, I tell you what, we get these beautiful wildflowers like the lupin that you see here. We've got spiderwort, beautiful spiderwort that grows up. And I'll be honest with you, these pictures, I need to find better pictures because these don't do these wildflowers justice. Columbine and other plants that grow. My favorite is I don't think I have a picture of it, is butterfly weed. The butterfly weed is just starting to come out, and the lupin is already gone. We have cocoons. Oh gosh, we have all sorts of plants, wildflowers that start to come, especially in the spring after a good hard burn. But as you can see, the park is beautiful no matter what time of year, whether it's fall, whether it's winter, whether it's summer, spring, it doesn't matter. Miller Woods, which is, like I said, at the far west end of the park, closest to Chicago, is, I have to say, probably, if not the most beautiful part of the park, one of the most beautiful parts of the park. So I invite you guys to come out and see that. Now, as we move east towards Michigan City and the Michigan border, we go to what we call West Beach. And West Beach is probably what a lot of people from Illinois know about as far as the park. Yes, a lot of people that come to Indiana Dunes, especially the younger people, they say, oh yeah, I know Indiana Dunes. That's the beach. That's West Beach. Well, you've got it. It's West Beach. And there's a fee booth there, and you go into the fee booth, you pay your fee to get in, $6 or whatever it might be. I don't remember what it is now. I think it's still $6. The ranger will give you some information and tell you a little bit about the park. But that's about it. Then you go to the bathhouse where we have concessions. Sometimes we have food trucks there. And then people just go and hang out on the beach. It's one of the most popular beaches. In fact, we get well over 2 million visitors a year, and 95% of those visitors only go to the beach. And even the beach area has such great diversity that they don't get to see. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. So these kids, like I said, environmental education is our big thing. So we get them to come out to the beach. And when they get out to the beach, they get to explore and do scientific research while they're there. We get to let them understand that these areas are scientific research areas where not only scientists come, but they can come and learn about the plants and the animals and how we can coexist with them. So the kids get to go out, and of course, while they're out there doing their research, they're also having fun, as you can see, and they're getting to immerse themselves in an ecosystem that at first they thought, oh, this is just where I go and hang out in the summertime and swim. They didn't know about the different plants and things that are out there. Until they got to see and do the work with us park rangers. You can see the beautiful dunes there. And the reason we have these beautiful dunes and these beautiful vistas is because of primary dune stabilizers. As you can see with this picture here, we're looking down at the bathhouse at West Beach from on top of one of the dunes. And you can actually, if you look close, you can see on the lake there, you can see Chicago. You can wave, hey, there's Chicago, there's my home, right? So the only way that we have those dunes and those great vistas is because of the primary dune stabilizers like the marram grass that you see here. The marram grass, the cottonwood trees you see here, they all have different adaptations. For instance, the cottonwood tree has thick waxy leaves, right? And you're probably wondering, well, why does it have thick waxy leaves? Well, transpiration, where plants give off excess moisture, it's something that these trees can't afford to do because the substrate or the ground that they're living in is sandy soil, right? It doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it, and when it does rain, that soil lets the water percolate through very quickly. So whatever moisture it does pick up with its roots, it's got to keep. So that waxy leaf helps keep transpiration down, and it also helps keep insects from eating it as well. It's harder for the insects to eat things. This is another one called a sand cherry. The sand cherries are actually edible. At certain times of the year, you can eat them. So they spot the dunes and their root systems reach down into the soil to stabilize the sand so the sand doesn't blow away. And then we've got the wildflowers that grow, like the hairy puccoons that you see here, the yellow puccoons, and also the lupin that you see there. And so when you come to West Beach, you'll see fields of this. You'll be going down and you'll see fields of it, and you look down, and amongst the fields of that, you'll see grapes. You'll see wild river grapes that grow in the sandy soil. So that's another food supply for some of the animals that might live there. And then you'll see this, which is very beautiful. Later on in the summer, you're going to see the prickly pear cactus bloom. It's beautiful. And you're thinking, wow, we have cactus in Indiana. Yep, we sure do. We have cactus in Northwest Indiana. And the only other place other than the desert that I've ever seen cactus was when I was in college. I was in Southern Illinois, and there was cactus in Southern Illinois. I forgot the park that I was at. It's a park down in Southern Illinois that I saw it. And unfortunately, we have poison ivy, and it seems like every year we get more and more of it. So you've got to be careful. And so that's just my spiel to tell you guys to stay on the trail, keep your eyes open. Leaves of 3, leave it be. Sometimes if you're on a boardwalk, be careful, because even though you're on the boardwalk, this poison ivy will grow up through the boardwalk. And we don't want you to get that. So in amongst the plants, we have animals, and you can see this Fowler's toad here. This is one of the toads that buries itself in the sand and has great camouflage. It's sitting here amongst Arctic bearberry. And so that's kind of unique as well. You have an Arctic plant that grows quite well here in the dunes, next to a desert plant, which was the prickly pear cactus. And you're thinking, well, how does that work? Well, if you think about it, this Arctic plant, it's very similar. The conditions are very similar because it doesn't get a lot of water, right? In the Arctic, most of the water it's like a cold desert. Most of the water is locked up for 7-8 months out of the year. It's locked up in ice, right? So here in Indiana Dunes, you've got a desert-like situation. So both the cactus and this plant can survive quite well. So the toad likes to sit in there and catch the insects and things that move around inside the plants in its habitat. But there's something that likes to slither around and catch the toads, which is kind of neat. And that happens to be the hognose snake. And this hognose snake, we see these all the time. They're beautiful. They're one of the most beautiful snakes I've ever seen. And they put on this crazy display. One of the adaptations that it has with that turned up nose is for it to dig underneath the ground where the toads like to lay down in the middle of the day. The toads don't like the heat of the day, so they bury themselves underneath the sand. Well, these guys dig underneath the sand and dig them out, and they'll eat them. And when they do get them, they have these little fangs. I don't have a pointer, so I can't show you. But in this picture, if you see the top of his mouth, there's a little tiny fang, and there's another one on the other side. You can't really see it very well. But when the toads or a frog starts to be eaten, it puffs itself up. Well, these guys puncture the frog or the toad, and the air goes out, and they're able to swallow the thing whole. And that's what they do. But a really cool adaptation that these animals have to thwart predators, because they do have predators like raccoons and hawks, sometimes other snakes, is they puff themselves up, flatten their neck out, and raise their neck up off the ground. And so they make themselves look very menacing, almost like a cobra. And they do a lot of hissing. Might even fake strike, and they don't bite. They're not one of these snakes that bite, but they might lunge at you like they're going to bite. And if that doesn't work and you don't go away, they will flop over on their belly and they'll play dead. Not only will they play dead, but they will secrete a foul odor, which, I mean, most animals, once they smell that, they're like, well, that's rotten, dead. It's, I'm not going to eat that. And all of this is adaptation for it to, to survive. Now, if that doesn't work, which I found out, unfortunately, firsthand, I went ahead and picked the snake up. Well, the snake comes out of its little trance, and then it just starts to spray feces all over you. And that stench is so bad that your wife is like, okay, take your clothes off and go burn them, because you're not putting those in my laundry. It's not going in my washing machine. It's really, really bad. And so between all those things, that usually deters any predator from eating it. Now, this little guy is a 6-line race runner, and they're cute. They're really small. You usually hear them before you see them. So you hear them scurrying around in the brush and in the sand. They're really, really fast. And luckily, if you're lucky, you'll look over and you're going to see it going away. Sometimes you might see them without a tail. And the reason why that happens is because what they'll do is, if you try to catch one, or if you're a predator and you grab onto them, it's usually that tail end that you're going to grab, because they're so fast. They drop their tail off, right? And so that predator is left with a squirming tail, and the lizard gets away. And of course, the tail will regenerate and grow back within a month or so. So we're going to move on from West Beach, which, as you can see, was one of my favorite spots. We went from the Paul H. Douglas Center for Environmental Education to West Beach, where you have to pay your money to get in to park and to enjoy your day at the beach and hopefully explore a little bit more. And now we're going to go a little bit further east to the central part of the park, and we're going to go to the Chelberg Farm and Bailey Homestead. So we're talking about 1822 all the way up to 1930s. So let's look at that real quick. So the Chelbergs were from Sweden, and at the turn of the century, they were coming here, and they decided, hey, you know what? We're going to try to make it here in the United States. And they ended up on the East Coast, and in a few months, they made their way, why we're not exactly sure, to Northwest Indiana. Now, they were farmers. So what they saw here was this land full of trees, and there was not really much that they could do except chop those trees down. So the first part of their livelihood was actually, they were lumber people. They were cutting down the trees and they were selling the lumber so they could make a living. From that, they actually started to build a homestead, and they actually started to farm, make a kind of a nice, beautiful farm with some animals, and started doing their farming. They were known fairly quickly in the area for maple sugaring, though. And that's what we celebrate here. We have what we call a maple sugar festival. These are some of the buildings that you'll see if you come and see the farm. These are pictures I took in the wintertime because I thought it was so beautiful, of the chicken coop, the pump house and an outhouse. That's the chicken coop there. There's a corn crib that would have kept their corn, the barn. And this happens to be the stove that they would have done their cooking on. And we have, during that Maple Sugar Festival and other festivals that we have there, we actually have volunteers that know how to cook on a wood burning stove. And these ladies do an amazing job. You walk in there, and the reason we're doing that is so that people, when they're coming to the festivals and coming to visit, they get a sense and a smell of what it would have been like with the Chelbergs living there. And a lot of times we get older people that come in and they're like, man, that smells like home. It reminds them of when they were little kids, and their families were cooking on wood burning stoves and things like that. So it's pretty neat to see that. Now, like I was saying before, the big event is our festivals, our Maple Sugar Festival, our harvest festivals, and things like that, where we have people coming out demonstrating how life would have been in the late 1800s and 1900s. My favorite is the Maple Sugar Festival. As you can see, we have a sugar shack, and this is the exact sugar shack that the Chelbergs would have built out of the sand from the beaches right here in Northwest Indiana. And we actually collect the sap out of the trees that surround the Chelberg farm in the woods there, the eastern deciduous forest that grows there. And as we tap those trees, we cook the sap down. And this just happens to be a picture I took of one year. I don't remember the year now. I think it was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this picture was taken. And we got, by the end of the festival, we had 3.5 gallons. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's not very much. And it's not, but we aren't doing it to sell. We're doing it for demonstration purposes. So at the end of every day, if we have a program, at the end of that program, we shut everything down. The Chelbergs would have been doing it 24/7. They would have been making hundreds of gallons of maple syrup and selling it, putting on trains to Chicago and selling it to the factories, candy factories and restaurants and things like that, so they could supplement their income from farming, right? And pay their taxes and things like that. So the 1930s, this was a big, big thing for them and really helped them survive. Some of the other festivals that we've had, like I said, quilt making during some of the festivals. Good to see how they would have done that. It's a great place to take your kids and your family. Get to see how they would have used the livestock, the horses, the cows. Now, as we go further east, we're going into Michigan City, Indiana, where I actually live, and we have one of our tallest dunes, which is Mount Baldy. Mount Baldy is beautiful. In fact, when you're at the top of Mount Baldy and looking out, sometimes you're thinking you're looking out at off the coast of the Mediterranean or something, because that view, if you're standing on the dunes, you don't see Chicago, you don't see any industry, you just see turquoise blue water and sand. It's beautiful. Kids love to climb the dune. It's one of those dunes that you're able to climb the side of it. We let people climb up the side of the dune and walk down, but we've sectioned it off now so that we have more stabilization of the dune. As you can see here, if the dune grows, it will grow over the forest and actually kill the trees. The trees don't acclimate to the shifting sand fast enough, and the trees will actually die. So we try to stop that and start getting this primary dune stabilizers start growing on the dunes, like your cottonwood trees and like your marram grass and other grasses, so that we can stabilize the dune. We've even gone up and we put in barricades and things like that to redirect people to the sections of the dune that we allow you to walk on, so that you're not killing those grasses and things like that. A lot of hard work by our maintenance division and our resource management division to help try to maintain this ecosystem and maintain the dune so that people can enjoy it and take beautiful pictures like this when they're at the top of it. So another beautiful place that I like, and it's again kind of astonishing that it's actually there, but it's a bog. A lot of people think of bogs and they think of faraway places, but we actually have a true bog here in Northwest Indiana. And it's one of those places where you get in there and you're like, wow, this is neat. But then it's kind of foreboding because you can't hear the cars anymore. And you realize that no one can hear you either. And you get out into this bog and you can get bogged down. And so that's why you need to stay on the path, because you don't want to step off the path for two reasons. One, you can get bogged down in it and no one's going to hear you scream, right? And the other part are the plants that you just saw. These plants that you saw, the pitcher plant, the sundew, these are insect eating plants. They're specialized to live in the bog where you've got very acidic conditions and low nutrients. And they're able to supplement a lot of their nutrients and the food that they need by eating insects. Another great thing about the bog is the blueberries. I love blueberries. And in July, the blueberries are ripe and delicious. So if I give you a tour of the bog, if you come out with me, you ask, hey, I want to go out on a pin-up bog tour with Ranger Kip. Well, you're not going to get much information because I'm going to be sitting there and I'm going to be eating lots of blueberries. And I guarantee you, as good as they taste, you'll be eating lots of blueberries too. But you'll be on this boardwalk. And in fact, we're redoing the boardwalk. So I think July 30th is the last tour of the bog until we get the boardwalk redone. So they're going to go in and redo the boardwalk. A lot of people, when they're on the boardwalk, I don't know if you can tell in this picture, but the boardwalk starts to sink down a little bit. And so people get their feet wet, and it's the smell. It smells like rotten eggs because you're on a bog and you've got all this rotten, decayed material underneath what we call sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss covers over the top, and then underneath is 20 to 30 foot of water, and it's stagnant water. So, but it's very beautiful, very, very beautiful place that you've got to go. I don't want to give too much information on it. I want you to come out and explore the bog and the upland area of the bog too, which is a hike that you can take around the outside of the bog. To go into the bog proper, you have to have a reservation and you have to go in with a ranger. So, let's talk real briefly about the recreational opportunities. In fact, I'm going to be doing this tomorrow. I've got a group coming out and we're going to be doing a paddling at Marquette Park in the lagoon there. Now, I have to say, Marquette Park, oh, I see a hand. Let's see. How do I address that? I don't remember how to do that. Marianne has her hand up. So how does that work? Can anybody help me with that?
Let's see.
Dolores. Yes.
Dolores, can you type your question into the Q&A, please?
Or talk, it doesn't matter. Either way. She can unmute herself if she wants.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry, I just thought I could click on it and see, but I didn't have a question right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. No worries at all. Yeah, and I'll have
Thank you.
plenty of time at the end here for questions. But as I was saying, we provide, if you want to come out and paddle and you've never paddled before, this is the place to do it. What you see here, this beautiful spot that you see here, is where I'm going to be tomorrow. And those people that you see out there, most of them have never paddled before. And so you will get a ranger. There's several of us that will instruct you on how to put on your life vest properly, how to hold your paddle properly, how to get in and out of your kayak. And the cool thing about kayaking with us is we have a ADA launch. And the ADA launch, accessible launch, can be used by anybody. So getting in and out of the kayak is so easy when you're doing it this way. so it makes it for an easy in and out, and you get to see this beautiful area, and you get to kayak and do something that possibly you've never done before. If you have kayaked before, please come out with us and enjoy us and have a good time with us all. It takes about an hour to an hour and a half to do the paddle. So, and there'd be plenty of rangers there to help you, and it's really fun. Fishing is fun. This is me on one of the ponds, interdunal ponds, and I'm out on my canoe, and I caught my biggest largemouth bass, over 5 pounds. I was really super happy. I was stoked that day, catching that big largemouth bass. So fishing, as long as you have a valid Indiana fishing license, you can come and do fishing in the dunes. Birding, one of my favorite things to do. Getting out, going to the different streams and rivers and wetlands. We've got lots of marshes and things like that, and prairies, and all these lend to great birding. We've been seeing indigo buntings lately. What else have we seen? Marsh wrens. The other day I saw the black-crowned night heron. Bald eagles are making a great comeback, so we're starting to see the bald eagles. All different kinds of warblers. I'm not great with my warblers because there's so many of them and they're hard to see, but I've been out with some avid birders and they've been seeing lots of different warblers out, and things like that. So year round, I mean, if you get out, you get to go cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. I love to cross-country ski, and we've got some of the great trails, and they're not groomed trails. So if you're one of these cross-country skiers that are like, hey, I need a groomed trail, we don't have those. But if you're a beginner or someone that just likes to get out in nature and try something for the first time, or just get out and exercise in a beautiful place, you can do cross-country skiing. And this is my wife and my daughter, and just getting out with your pet and hiking. We're on one of the dune ridges overlooking a marsh. You can see the marsh in the background, and we just love to get out and go biking and hiking and just enjoy the dunes. And of course, like I said earlier, the beach is over half of the visitors, 90 to 95% of the visitors, that's where they go, is the beach. So I invite you guys to come out to Indiana Dunes National Park and just come see me, look me up. I'd love to come out and take you out on a hike and take you to some of my favorite spots. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and any questions that you might have, we can do that. Yeah, I think I stopped sharing, I think. So yeah, I don't know how much time I have. Oh gosh, I've almost gone an hour. Wow, I didn't realize that. So yeah, any questions?
Yeah, Kip, it looks like we have some questions in the Q&A box. I don't know if you want to
Okay.
take a look there.
Okay, Q&A box.
Just click on Q&A.
Okay, I see that. I grew up going to the dunes and knew only about the beach. There's so much more. Yes, there is. Marianne, there's a lot more to just go and see and do. And that's the big thing, is actually getting yourself out there and going biking and hiking and just getting to see some of the special parts of the dunes, and going places, asking locals and coming, talking to some of the rangers and getting to those special spots that people don't know about. That's really cool. Oh, the 3 Dunes Challenge. Joe wants to know, yeah, did you talk about the 3 Dune Challenge? Well, the 3 Dune Challenge is actually the state park, not the national park. But that brings up something kind of neat, because what we've done is we've piggybacked on the state park's 3 Dunes Challenge. And just so that you understand, the state park was here before the national park, right? National park was established in 1966, and the state park, I know I'm going to get this wrong, I want to say 1930 something. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember, but they were here first. Now, once the national park got established, we actually surround the state park. On either side of the state park is the national park. And I've done the 3 Dune Challenge there at the state park. It's a tough challenge. Back when I was younger, I should say younger, I was in my 40s. I'm 53 now. Actually, my birthday is June 25th and I turned 53. I used to do the 3 Dune Challenge with a 45-pound backpack on my back. And so if you've ever done the 3 Dune Challenge or know what I'm talking about, that's tough to do it with. And I can never do that again. I'm not ever going to do that again. But what we've done at the national park out at West Beach, which I showed you, that was, I think, our second stop on the tour was West Beach. We have several high dunes and trails out there that you can climb and go on. And we have Diana of the Dunes Challenge. And with the Diana of the Dunes Challenge, which is kind of a takeoff of the 3 Dune Challenge, is you go through the Succession Trail and you climb those dunes and you talk about Alice Mabel Gray, which is one of the women that were established in the dunes. And there's stories about her living in the dunes and her life that she gave up in Chicago, her education. She was very well educated and on her way to being a great person there in Chicago and University of Illinois. And she said, you know what? I'm giving this stuff up because life here in Chicago isn't good. I'm going to go and live in the dunes. And she lived in the dunes. So we have this thing called Diana of the Dunes Challenge. And you get to do that and learn about her. And you get a sticker. At the end, you get this really neat sticker you can put on the back of your car. And I've got one on the back of my car. It's really cool. All right, I'll keep moving on here, kind of babbling. Does a person need to know how to swim in order to kayak? No, you don't need to know how to swim in order to kayak because you will have a life vest. You're not allowed to go into any of our boats on our programs without a life vest. And we show you how to properly fit that life vest, make sure that it's snug and safe, so that if you do tip out, something like that, which has never happened, knock on wood, you will float. You won't have to know how to swim. And all of our employees have taken kayaking courses and safety courses and stuff like that. So if you do fall out, basically we know how to get you to the shore. And in many cases, and I'll be honest with you, in many cases, you could stand up. You might be standing up in muck, but if you stand up, you're going to be maybe waist deep or a little bit higher in the water, and that's it. So, all right, let's go to great lecture. Thank you. Thanks, Ellie, for saying that. And let's see, go down a little bit further. How many miles of trails are there to hike? Oh gosh, I don't know. I think it's over 56 miles of trails to hike. And actually, I think there's more than that if you count some of the spur trails that we have and the biking trails and things like that. But we have trail maps, and each of the trail maps will have the mileage on there. And that's kind of neat because a lot of people do challenge themselves to, in a summer, to go and try to hike all of our trails, which is kind of neat. It's a big challenge to do that. Will this be, yes, this will be available for later viewing. I think George told me that it's being recorded. So you can review it later. Can kids do kayaking with their parents too? Yes. You can come with your kids. We have, I think, two or three tandem kayaks. So you can actually use the tandem kayaks where you and your child can sit together in the kayak together and paddle. In fact, on June 11th, we had a man and his son come, and neither of them had ever paddled before, and they were very nervous. And I said, why don't you two get in the tandem kayak and do this together? It was kind of funny because it ended up where the kid was just sitting there having fun and the dad was doing all the work paddling. I said, yeah, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Have fun while you're out there. When walking, Dolores asked, when walking on the sandy areas, is it firm or do you sink into loose sand? Oh, gosh, how do I answer that? It depends. So there's areas where the sand is loose and it's going to be a workout, right? So if you're climbing the dune and walking on the sand, in some places it's loose. You know, at the end of it, if you haven't done it in a while, your calves are going to be burning a little bit, right? But then there are places where it's going to be firm and packed, where it's going to be okay. Usually down by the water, by the edge of the water, it's more packed and firm. There are areas where there's quicksand, where you get an area where water saturates the sand and you can't tell. You start to walk out on it, and then you start to sink in. Now you're not going to sink in unless you're not paying attention or something for a long time. You're not going to sink in enough to where you're going to get trapped or anything like that. But you just gotta kind of know what you're looking at. And those are, you're not going to see too many of that. Most of it's going to be nice hard sand by the water, and then up on the dunes is where you're going to get the soft sand, where you're like trying to trudge through and get a workout. So let's do a couple more. I'm starting to lose my voice here. Oh wow, off topic. I felt the earthquake in West. Ooh, was that today? Marianne's saying that there was an earthquake. Huh. In the western suburbs of Chicago. Wow, that's pretty crazy. How many miles of biking trails are there? Oh gosh, Robbie. I wish I would have brought my brochure with me, because I don't remember how many miles of biking trails we do biking programs at the park. And some of them are on our trails and some of them aren't. We've got two main biking trails. One is from the Douglas Center to West Beach, and the other one stretches across the east end of the park, starting at near the state park and the train station there. In fact, that's kind of cool because you can get off the train. I know the South Shore allows bicycles on some of those trains. I think there's designated trains that you can bring your bike on. And so you can get off the train at the train stop near the state park, get on the bike trail and bike all the way to Mount Baldy, which is over 5 miles in Michigan City. That's kind of cool. But the whole length of bike trails, I don't remember the exact number of miles all our bike trails are. Can you use a national park? Joe asked, can you use the National Park Pass program to pay for admission to West Beach? No, you cannot use the park pass to pay permission to West Beach, because it's not a user fee, it's a parking fee. So, and I'm not going to pretend to understand about why that is, but no, we don't take that. So thank you so much, Anonymous. Yeah, thank you. Glad you got a lot of good information. Okay. All right. I think that's it, guys. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed that, and hopefully you enjoyed it too.